Violent night, gory night, nothing's calm, nothing's right. Santa shouldn't be near a child. This movie gets bloody and wild. Rest in heavenly pieces. Rest in heavenly pieces. If you thought that was screwed up, then you probably shouldn't see this movie. So Violent Night was directed by Tommy Wirkola and it stars David Harbour as Santa Claus. And when a group of mercenaries led by John Leguizamo break into the house of a very wealthy family, Santa Claus finds himself trapped in this house, so now he must take out the bad guys one by one, save the family that's being held hostage, and also try to find his Christmas spirit. So when I first saw the trailer for this movie, I was admittedly very, very excited. This movie looked absolutely ridiculous and insane and fun. It looked like it was just going to be this movie that just didn't take itself too seriously. And I was just ecstatic. It looked a whole lot of fun. It looked like a bloody good time. And like, I was thinking to myself, okay, this movie looks great. This movie looks like fun. And this movie should be just absolutely fun, shouldn't take itself too seriously. And I thought the worst two things this movie could do was to either show the best parts in the trailer or just make it more serious than it should be. So what I think of this movie, I felt that it took itself too seriously and showed the best parts in the trailer. Which, that's probably the two worst things you could do for this movie, unfortunately. I am a little bit disappointed in this movie. So, I'm going to be fair. Let's go into what I did like. First off, David Harbour completely slays as Santa Claus in this movie. He was funny, he was dark, the action he did was incredible, and I liked his relationship with the girl in the movie. I thought that was really well done, and I thought he just completely disappeared in this movie. I honestly didn't even recognize that was David Harbour. It was just really well done. As far as the other actors go, some of them do a really good job. Alexis Louder plays the main girl's mother. I thought she did a good job. Also, Leah Brady is really good in this movie too. Beverly D'Angelo, she has a lot of she says a lot of messed up things in this movie, and I thought she did a really good job in this movie as well. As far as the henchmen go, even though most of them are kind of flat in my opinion, the only one that really stood out was Brendan Fletcher. He was the one who was holding a gun to a lot of the family members in this movie. He was Krampus in this movie. And I thought he was the only one who tried to do the best that he can with the performances in this movie. The character he was given, even though he doesn't really have a whole lot of character, he had a blast with it. And I did find this movie occasionally funny. A lot of the action, what they use for weapons in this movie, I thought that was really funny. And there are a lot of really creative scenes, even though, again, a lot of them are sadly in the trailer. They're still pretty creative and fun. And I also kind of like the use of Christmas movie music throughout this movie, where it's they kind of use it as the score in this movie. They use it a lot during the fight scenes, and I thought it was really well done throughout this movie. I also really liked how campy it was at times, where it's they're trying to sound so serious, but what they're saying is absolutely ridiculous. And I think when they did that, it was working really well. It was just when they were trying to be a little bit more serious, and it didn't really focus on that, it just didn't work. And also, I kind of like the comments on commercialism in this movie. Santa's a bit run down. He's been doing this for pretty much all of his life, and he's just sick and tired of it, and sick and tired of how people want more and more, and they want very generic things like video games and money and all these really expensive gifts. And I kind of like that in this movie, that they do comment on that, and they're that's not really what Christmas should be about. The problem is, there's a lot of problems with this movie, I'm going to say. First off, the main family in this movie that Santa Claus is trying to save is just downright despicable and disgusting. I'll at least give Beverly D'Angelo a pass because I thought she did really well with that, and she was supposed to be this character, but oh my god, almost everyone else in this movie is just horrible. The main girl's dad, I hated him by the end. His sister, I didn't like. Her son, I absolutely hated him. I wanted to punch him at times. It was just unbearable at times. At least Cam Gidget, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he was funny at times as this actor who's clearly a parody of someone like Mark Wahlberg, I guess. But that was ridiculous and funny, but everyone else in this movie, I just kind of just hate it. As far as the henchmen go, a lot of them are kind of one note, and they kind of just don't really do much with their performances other than just being very one note. John Leguizamo, unfortunately, is just a very generic villain in this movie, and also his motive is not really that interesting, and also it doesn't really make sense given his code name in the movie. In the movie, his code name is Scrooge. It's Mr. Scrooge, and his motive at one point he goes on about my father was laid off, and so we couldn't afford Christmas one year, and so I saw our neighbors and I stole all their stuff, and I'm like, then wouldn't it make more sense if your code name was Mr. Grinch instead of Mr. Scrooge? It would have made more sense. Oh well. And again, as I mentioned, a lot of the good parts are in the trailer. A lot of the good actions in the trailer. A lot of the jokes in the trailer are actually not in the movie. Remember, time for some season's beatings. Yeah, that's actually not in the movie. And also, these guys are Feliz Navi dead. Not in the movie. Why would I? That was just stupid. And I also felt it was just tonally uneven at times. Like, it tried to be a little too serious, and it tried to take the whole Christmas spirit angle a little bit too seriously. And it didn't really work for me, unfortunately, and it kind of just made for this tonally uneven movie where it's like, oh, let's have some heart, and then let's have this bloody violence. And when it tried to be campy, and when it tried to go for the bloody violence, that was when it was really great. And I felt like at times it was a little bit uneven when it came to like the actual messaging of the movie. And also, I didn't really care for the gross humor. Now, I don't mind vulgar, I don't mind blood, I don't mind violence or anything like that. It was just the gross bodily functions in this movie. I get it, that's rated R, but like the opening joke almost turned me off from this movie completely. I'm like, okay, I don't want to see this movie if it's going to be like that. Thankfully, it's not overly gross. It's just, I don't want to see that. Like, I don't want to see bodily functions used as jokes. It's just not funny. It's gross. And also, the movie is clearly trying to be like an homage to movies like Die Hard and Home Alone, and this movie is clearly like what someone said. It's clearly like what someone thought when people say Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie, so they took the plot of Die Hard and made it into a literal Christmas movie. And there are times in this movie where at first it just feels like a pure homage to those movies, and then it just segues into ripoffs. Like, okay, so clearly the plot is the main homage to movies like Die Hard, but then they kind of just start saying lines from Die Hard. It just doesn't, it just goes from homage to ripoff. And the Home Alone, it kind of works. The girl who just recently watched Home Alone, so she's really fascinated by that. So she sets up her own traps at some point. And first it's like, okay, it's an homage to Home Alone. And then eventually that kind of just segues into ripping off Home Alone. And so it just kind of didn't work for me there. So Violent Night was a little disappointing to me. It was definitely fun. David Harbour was great. Some of the actors do a really good job. And I kind of like the action in this movie. And it can be funny. But I just felt like half the characters I just didn't care for. The tone is just incredibly uneven. It kind of goes from homage to ripoff pretty quickly. And also, I forgot to mention this, there are a few scenes that actually kind of feel like torture. And it just kind of just segued into like these really disturbing things that you would probably see in something like Saw. And like, Jesus, that's just ridiculous. That's just scary right there. I don't want anyone to deal with that. And that was also kind of something that almost turned me off from this movie. So, yeah, I just didn't care for it. I want to say this movie how do I say this? It's not as fun as the trailer suggested, but when it does give you what the trailer promised, it can be a good time. It's just, it tries a little bit harder. I know it's because it's like a Christmas movie and I want to put a little more effort into it, but I just felt like it didn't really work overall tonally, and I would have just made the characters a little bit more likable, and I feel like this is a missed opportunity. So I'll give Violent Night 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So, what's your favorite unconventional Christmas movie? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.